The crimson warning beacon pulsed across 3 star systems simultaneously, its message echoing through subspace channels that hadn't been used in over 2 centuries. Ambassador Kithara of the Velthani Republic watched the transmission with growing dread, her crystalline features reflecting the ominous light. "Repeat the message," she commanded, her voice barely a whisper. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human figure in what appeared to be formal diplomatic attire. But his eyes, Kithara had seen those eyes before, during the first contact protocols 50 years ago. They belonged to someone who had witnessed unspeakable things. "This is Ambassador Reynard Ashworth of the Terran Confederacy," the figure began, his voice carrying the weight of finality. "For 5 decades, humanity has abided by the Galactic Accords. We have restricted our expansion, limited our military development, and maintained peaceful relations despite provocations." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The attack on Colony Verdania was the final transgression. The systematic extermination of 3 million human civilians, men, women, children, by Korthak raiders has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. Kithara's breath caught. The Korthak hegemony had been claiming those raids were rogue pirates for months. As of this transmission, the Terran Confederacy formally withdraws from all galactic accords. The restraints we have willingly placed upon ourselves for the sake of galactic peace are hereby removed. The camera pulled back, revealing Ashworth, standing before what appeared to be a vast military complex. Ships, more ships than any civilization should possess, stretched beyond the horizon. "We gave you 50 years to prove that coexistence was possible. You have failed. The galaxy has been warned." The transmission ended, leaving the Velthani command center in stunned silence. General Vextharian, a veteran of the Sigma Wars, stepped forward. "Surely this is a bluff. Humans are peaceful. Their military capabilities are limited by the Accords." "The Accords that they just withdrew from," Kithara interrupted. "General, what do you know about human history before first contact?" "Very little. They sealed their historical archives as part of the integration process." Kithara activated her personal terminal, accessing classified files that only the highest-ranking diplomats were permitted to view. The data streams painted a picture that made her species' most violent conflicts look like children's games. "World War II, she read aloud. 60 million dead in 6 years. The American Civil War, 600,000 casualties. The 100 Years' War. The Crusades. The Mongol conquests." She looked up, her crystalline eyes wide with realization. "They didn't achieve peace through evolution, General. They chose it." The implications hit the room like a physical force. A species that had voluntarily restrained itself, that had chosen diplomacy over its natural instincts, had just announced that the choice was no longer in effect. "Ma'am," a communications officer called out, his voice shaking. "We're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Human ships are moving. Not just a few, entire fleets. They're emerging from systems we didn't even know they had access to." Kithara closed her eyes. In her long diplomatic career, she had negotiated truces, prevented wars, and brokered peace between species that had been enemies for millennia, but she had never faced anything like this. "Send a priority message to the Galactic Council," she ordered. Tell them that humanity is no longer bound by our agreements, and may the stars have mercy on us all." The beacon continued to pulse, its crimson light a harbinger of the storm to come. High Admiral Dravek Korvanis of the Korthak hegemony dismissed the human transmission with a scoff, his razor-sharp mandibles clicking in amusement. Standing in the command center of the dreadnought Bone Ripper, he surveyed the readouts from his latest conquest with satisfaction. "Primitive mammals," he growled to his subordinates. 50 years of their peaceful coexistence has made them soft. They dare threaten the hegemony? Commander Ultek, his second-in-command, shifted nervously. "High Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest—" "Intelligence reports suggest nothing," Korvanis cut him off. "I have seen their warships, pathetic constructs designed for exploration, not conquest. They couldn't challenge a single hegemony battlecruiser, let alone our entire fleet. What Corvanus didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. While other species saw their scientific vessels and exploration craft, they missed the massive industrial complexes hidden in asteroid belts, the weapons research conducted in the deepest reaches of space, and the military doctrine that had been refined in absolute secrecy. Captain Ilara Nighthawk stood on the bridge of the TCNS Prometheus Unbound, watching the tactical display with cold precision. Unlike the sleek, elegant vessels of other galactic civilizations, human ships had been built with a different philosophy: function over form, lethality over beauty. "Ma'am, we're receiving confirmation from Fleet Command," her communications officer reported. "Operation Broken Chain is authorized. All human colonies have been evacuated to secure systems." Ilara nodded. The humans had learned from Verdania. Never again would their civilians be caught defenseless. "Helm, set course for the Korthak border. Maximum burn." "Aye, Captain. ETA to target in 6 hours. As the Prometheus Unbound accelerated through hyperspace, similar scenes played out across human space. Fleets that had been hidden for decades emerged from concealment. Ships that had been disguised as mining vessels revealed their true nature as arsenal ships. Civilian installations transformed into military strongholds with the flip of a switch. Meanwhile, in the Korthak hegemony's capital system, Corvanus was about to receive his first lesson in why humanity's restraint had been a gift, not a weakness. "Hi, Admiral." An alarm rang through the command center. "We're detecting massive hyperspace signatures approaching our border worlds." Corvanus turned to the tactical display, expecting to see a handful of human vessels. Instead, the screen showed something impossible: a fleet larger than anything in recorded galactic history. "This must be an error," he snarled. "Recalibrate the sensors." "Sensors are functioning perfectly, sir. We're reading 1,500 human vessels in the first wave alone." The numbers sent a chill through the command center. The entire Korthak hegemony possessed perhaps 800 combat-worthy ships. How had the humans built a fleet nearly twice that size without anyone knowing? "Sir, they're transmitting." The display flickered, revealing Captain Nighthawk. Her uniform bore insignia that no galactic intelligence service had ever seen, the mark of the Terran Confederacy's true military force. "Hi, Admiral Corvanus," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute command. "I am Captain Nighthawk of the Human Defense Fleet. You are hereby ordered to surrender all personnel involved in the Verdania massacre for trial under Terran law." Corvanus laughed, though it sounded forced even to his own ears. "You dare make demands of the hegemony? We are the apex predators of this galaxy." Nighthawk's expression didn't change. "Hi, Admiral. You seem to be under the impression that humanity is prey. Allow me to correct that misunderstanding." The transmission ended, and the first wave of human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Korthak territory. What followed would forever change the galactic balance of power. But more importantly, it would answer a question that had puzzled xenobiologists for decades. What had humanity been like before they chose peace? The galaxy was about to find out. The first engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Corvanus watched in stunned horror as his impregnable border fortress, a massive space station that had withstood 3 separate galactic coalition attacks, was systematically dismantled by human forces, not destroyed in a glorious explosion, but methodically taken apart like a puzzle solved by patient hands. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, his voice cracking. Chief Tactical Officer Grextok analyzed the battle data with growing disbelief. "Sir, they're not using conventional weapons. These are... I've never seen anything like them. Gravitational disruptors, quantum cascade missiles, something called matter phase torpedoes." What the Korthak didn't understand was that while they had spent 50 years perfecting existing technology, humanity had been reinventing the very concept of warfare. Every human scientist who could have been developing faster-than-light drives was instead asking, "How do we unmake our enemies at the molecular level?" Captain Nighthawk observed the engagement from the bridge of her flagship, noting how efficiently her fleet operated. Each ship knew its role. Each crew member had trained for this exact scenario thousands of times in simulation. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "the fortress has surrendered. 0 human casualties." "Accepted. Begin Phase 2. Across the galaxy, similar scenes unfolded with terrifying precision. Human fleets emerged at strategic points along every major space lane, cutting off supply routes and isolating entire star systems. But they weren't conquering, they were demonstrating. On the Galactic Council's emergency session, Ambassador Kythera watched the tactical reports flood in with growing dread. The scale of human preparation was becoming clear, and it was staggering. "Counselor Vexthran," she addressed the hegemony's representative, "your forces engaged humanity at the Kronos Gate. What was the outcome?" Vexthran's usual arrogance had evaporated entirely. "Our second fleet encountered human vessels near the gate. We lost everything." Everything? 47 ships. Complete fleet destruction. The humans suffered no losses. His voice dropped to a whisper. "They offered quarter to survivors. Many of our warriors accepted." The chamber fell silent. In Korthak culture, surrender meant eternal dishonor. For their warriors to accept terms from an enemy spoke to something beyond mere military defeat. "How?" demanded Counselor Ithek of the Merchant Coalition. "How did they build such a force without our knowledge?" Ambassador Nighthawk, a different member of the family, this one assigned to diplomatic functions, materialized via hologram in the center of the chamber. Unlike his military cousin, his demeanor remained cordial, almost apologetic. "Honorable counselors," he began, "the answer to your question lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. You assumed that our compliance with the Galactic Accords indicated weakness. You were wrong." He gestured, and the hologram displayed a star chart showing human territory. But instead of the modest colonies and exploration outposts the Council expected, it revealed an industrial infrastructure that dwarfed most galactic civilizations. "We have been preparing for this contingency since the day we signed the Accords. Every asteroid belt in human space has been converted to manufacturing. Every research station has been developing military applications. Every colony has been training civilian defense forces." Counselor Kythera felt her species' equivalent of a heart attack coming on. The resource expenditure alone would be astronomical. Indeed. Fortunately, humans excel at one thing above all others: applied violence. We streamlined our entire civilization around the possibility that diplomacy might fail. The display showed manufacturing capabilities that shouldn't have been possible. Automated shipyards that could construct a battlecruiser in days rather than months. Weapon systems that violated several known laws of physics. Most disturbing of all, population centers designed as fortress worlds, where every civilian was also a trained soldier. "This is impossible," Vexthran protested. "No species could maintain this level of military readiness while appearing peaceful." "Ambassador." Nighthawk smiled, and for the first time the assembled counselors saw something truly frightening in human expression. "Counselor, you have never studied human history. Peace for us has always been a temporary condition between wars. We simply got very good at making the temporary periods last longer." The implications settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. Humanity hadn't evolved beyond war. They had perfected it. News of the Korthak defeat spread through the galaxy faster than hyperspace communications. Within hours, every major civilization was scrambling to reassess their intelligence on humanity, and what they found defied everything they thought they knew about their peaceful neighbors. Director Nixhara of the Syndicate Intelligence Division stared at the classified report spread across her desk, each one more disturbing than the last. For decades, her operatives had monitored human activity, confident they understood Terran capabilities. Now she realized they had been watching an elaborate performance. "Agent Colthrix," she called to her deputy, Explain to me how we missed orbital weapons platforms in every human system. The agent, normally unflappable, shifted nervously. Ma'am, they appeared to be commercial satellite networks. Communication arrays, weather monitoring, mineral survey equipment. That can apparently reconfigure into weapons of mass destruction within minutes, Nix Hera finished grimly. What else did we miss? The reports painted a picture of deception, so comprehensive it bordered on artistic. Human research stations that were actually military command centers. Civilian transport vessels that could deploy as troop carriers. Agricultural worlds that doubled as training grounds for planetary assault forces. Most unsettling was the revelation that every human they had encountered, diplomats, traders, scientists, even tourists, had received military training. The Q, friendly human merchant who sold exotic goods at space stations. Combat veteran, the earnest human researcher studying xenobiology. Former special operations, the human ambassador who had negotiated trade agreements for decades. Strategic warfare specialist. Meanwhile, Captain Ilara Nighthawk prepared for the next phase of Operation Broken Chain. The demonstration phase was complete. Now came the reckoning. Captain, her tactical officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Korthak systems. They're offering unconditional terms. Denied, Ilara replied without hesitation. Inform them that surrender is not an option until High Admiral Corvanus and his command staff are delivered for trial. Ma'am, begging your pardon, but command is asking why we're not accepting surrenders. It would end the conflict faster. Ilara turned from the tactical display, her expression grave. Lieutenant, this isn't about conquest. This is about sending a message that will echo through galactic civilization for the next 1,000 years. Every species that has ever looked at humanity and seen weakness, every government that has ever considered humans acceptable casualties, they're all watching. She gestured to the main screen, where the remnants of the Korthak Third Fleet drifted in space, disabled but not destroyed. We could have annihilated them in minutes. Instead, we're demonstrating precision. We could have glassed their worlds. Instead, we're targeting only military assets. Do you understand why? The lieutenant's eyes widened with comprehension. You're showing them that humanity's restraint was a choice, not a limitation. Exactly. And choice can be revoked. Across the galaxy, other human fleets were conducting similar demonstrations. The Valdoran Empire, which had been taxing human trade routes for years, found their customs stations mysteriously disabled by weapons that existed in theoretical physics papers but shouldn't have been deployable. The Nathari Confederacy, whose pirates had been raiding human shipping with government approval, discovered that every one of their hidden bases had been under human observation for decades. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when the Galactic Council demanded to inspect human home systems for treaty violations. Ambassador Nighthawk's response was to invite them for an official tour of Terra. What they found redefined their understanding of human civilization. Earth wasn't just the homeworld of humanity. It was a fortress world that made the galaxy's most militarized planets look defenseless. Every city was designed for siege warfare. Every civilian building had military applications. The planet's population of 12 billion included 8 billion trained soldiers. How long have you been preparing for war? Counselor Cathara asked in horror, as they toured what appeared to be a university but functioned as a military academy. Since the day we achieved interstellar travel, Ambassador Nighthawk replied calmly. The universe is a dangerous place, Counselor. We simply chose to be more dangerous than anything we might encounter. The tour continued, revealing orbital defense networks that could repel entire invasion fleets, manufacturing capabilities that could outfit armies in days, and perhaps most terrifying of all, a population that genuinely believed their cause was just. By the time the delegation left, Earth every member understood the same chilling truth. Humanity hadn't been restrained by the Galactic Accords. They had been restraining themselves, and that restraint was now permanently lifted. The Galactic Emergency Session convened in the neutral system of Kepler 442, far from any human presence, or so the delegates hoped. What they didn't know was that humanity had been monitoring every major galactic communication for 50 years, including this supposedly secret gathering. Chancellor Mordak of the Zerion Alliance took the podium, his 6 arms gesturing dramatically. Fellow beings, we face an unprecedented crisis. The humans have revealed military capabilities that threaten the balance of galactic power. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Representative species from across known space had gathered to address what they termed the human problem. Admiral Voss, then, of the Centauran Defense Fleet, stood next. I propose we form a coalition. No single species can match human military might, but together you would still lose. The voice came from empty air in the center of the chamber. Slowly, a human figure materialized, not a hologram, but an actual person wearing some form of advanced cloaking technology. I am Colonel Raven Blackthorn of Human Military Intelligence, the figure announced calmly. And I've been listening to your discussions with great interest. Panic erupted among the delegates. Security forces raised weapons, only to find their systems mysteriously disabled. Emergency communications failed to connect. Even the chamber's lighting dimmed to an ominous red. How? Chancellor Mordak began. How are we here? Colonel Blackthorn interrupted. How did we infiltrate your secure facility? How have we been monitoring your every communication for decades? She smiled, and it wasn't reassuring. The better question is, why did you think you could plan against us without us knowing? The holographic display activated, showing the chamber from dozens of angles, proof that human surveillance had been comprehensive and undetected. For 50 years, every major galactic government has underestimated humanity. You saw our peaceful nature and assumed weakness. You witnessed our compliance with treaties and thought it indicated submission. You were wrong on every count. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the consequences of this underestimation were becoming catastrophically clear. The Korthak hegemony's mighty war fleet had been reduced to scattered remnants, their supply lines severed, their commanders either captured or in hiding. High Admiral Corvanus himself had barricaded himself in a fortress moon, refusing to surrender despite his hopeless position. Captain Nighthawk studied the tactical situation from her flagship. The moon fortress represented the last organized Korthak resistance, but attacking it would require a ground assault that would cost human lives. The first of the campaign. Ma'am, her communications officer reported. We're receiving a transmission. From the fortress, it's from human prisoners. The screen flickered to life, revealing a group of humans in prisoner uniforms. They were survivors from Verdania, kept alive as bargaining chips. This is Dr. Helena Vasquez, the lead prisoner identified herself. We are being held in the fortress's central detention complex. Our captors have threatened to execute us if human forces attempt an assault. Captain Nighthawk's expression hardened. This was exactly the scenario human military doctrine had been designed to address. Doctor, can you confirm the number of hostages? 237 survivors from the colony attack. Understood. Stand by for extraction. The transmission ended, and Nighthawk turned to her tactical team. Initiate Protocol 7. Her officers exchanged glances. Protocol 7 was theoretical, untested in real combat conditions. It involved technology that pushed the boundaries of physics and required precision that allowed no margin for error. Ma'am, her first officer questioned, are you certain? The risks are acceptable when weighed against the alternative. Nighthawk's voice carried the authority of someone who had made similar calculations before. Execute Protocol 7. Full deployment. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. Using technology that seemed to bend space itself, human forces didn't assault the fortress. They extracted every single hostage while leaving their captors completely unharmed, but thoroughly demoralized. When High Admiral Corvanus emerged from his command bunker to find his human prisoners gone and his fortress infiltrated without a single detected breach, He finally understood what his species had challenged. He surrendered within the hour. Back in the Galactic Emergency Session, Colonel Blackthorn prepared to deliver humanity's terms. "The age of taking human lives without consequence is over," she announced to the terrified delegates. "From this moment forward, any aggression against human interests will be met with overwhelming and disproportionate response. We have demonstrated restraint for 50 years. Consider that period of galactic history permanently concluded." The demonstration was complete. The galaxy had been warned. Now came the consequences. 6 months after humanity lifted its self-imposed restraints, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. The Galactic Council chambers, once a place of heated debate and political maneuvering, now conducted business with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine, largely because every delegate was acutely aware that human observers were always present, even when unseen. Ambassador Nighthawk reviewed the latest reports from across human space. The transformation had been remarkable. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for decades were now completely secure. Territorial disputes that had simmered for centuries had been resolved almost overnight. Entire civilizations had restructured their governments rather than risk being perceived as aggressive toward human interests. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Commander Ashanti Okoye, approached with the daily briefings. "The Korthak hegemony trials are concluding. High Admiral Corvanus and his command staff have been found guilty of war crimes. Sentence pending your approval." Nighthawk nodded. The trials had been conducted with meticulous attention to galactic law, broadcast across all major communication networks. Humanity had insisted on due process, evidence, and legal representation for the accused. A stark contrast to the summary executions typical of galactic justice. Recommended sentence: life imprisonment on a rehabilitation world. The prosecution argued for execution, but the defense made a compelling case for the possibility of redemption. Approved. Let the galaxy see that human justice is firm but not vengeful. This distinction had been crucial to humanity's strategy. Every action since lifting the restraints had been calculated to demonstrate not just overwhelming force, but overwhelming righteousness. Human military doctrine had evolved beyond mere victory. It aimed for moral authority. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, Commander Phoenix Strider supervised the establishment of new human colonies on worlds that had been abandoned due to pirate activity. Where other species had retreated from lawless regions, humanity was expanding into them, bringing order through presence rather than conquest. "Commander," her survey team leader reported, "we've identified 17 habitable systems in this sector alone. No current inhabitants, but signs of previous colonization attempts by at least 4 different species." What happened to the previous colonists? Raids mostly. Pirates, slavers, the usual frontier hazards. Every colony was eventually abandoned. Strider smiled grimly. "Not anymore. Authorize full colonial development. If anyone wants to contest human presence in these systems, they're welcome to try." The message was spreading throughout the galaxy. Humanity had become the apex predator, but unlike previous galactic powers, they were using their dominance to create stability rather than chaos. Human-protected space was becoming synonymous with safety, prosperity, and the rule of law. This had created an unexpected consequence: voluntary subjugation. In the Viridian system, an entire star nation had petitioned to become a human protectorate after their government fell to a military coup. Rather than attempting to restore the old regime or imposing direct rule, humanity had implemented a unique solution: guided self-governance. "The concept is simple," explained Governor General Zara Nightwind to a delegation of potential protectorates. "We don't govern you. We teach you to govern yourselves effectively and protect you while you do it." The Viridian experiment had become a model replicated across a dozen systems. Human advisors worked with local populations to establish effective institutions, fair legal systems, and sustainable economies. In exchange, these protectorates provided resources and, more importantly, served as examples of human leadership. But perhaps the most significant change came in an unexpected area: galactic culture. On the entertainment networks of 100 worlds, human military achievements had become legendary, not the brutal conquests typical of galactic history, but surgical demonstrations of overwhelming competence. Young beings across the galaxy studied human strategic thinking, adopted human military philosophy, and even attempted to emulate human moral frameworks. Captain Nighthawk had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a conqueror admired by both allies and former enemies. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's an invitation." "What kind of invitation?" "They're offering humanity permanent seats on the Security Council with veto power over all major galactic decisions. They want to, I believe the phrase they used was, formalize humanity's leadership role." Nighthawk considered this carefully. A year ago, humanity had been a minor player in galactic politics, barely consulted on issues affecting their own trade routes. Now they were being offered effective control over galactic civilization. "Decline," she decided. "Ma'am, decline the offer, but propose an alternative. Humanity will accept advisory roles, consulting positions, and peacekeeping responsibilities. But we won't rule the galaxy. We'll teach it to rule itself." The message was clear. Humanity's goal wasn't domination, but elevation. They weren't seeking to replace the existing galactic order. They were attempting to perfect it. As news of humanity's response spread across the galaxy, a new understanding began to emerge among the various species and civilizations. The humans weren't interested in becoming galactic emperors. They were interested in becoming galactic guardians, and that somehow was even more terrifying. 2 years after humanity's restraint ended, Ambassador Nighthawk stood before the rebuilt galactic assembly on the neutral world of New Geneva, a human colony established specifically for interstellar diplomacy. The chamber buzzed with representatives from over 300 civilizations, each one aware that they were witnessing history. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Nighthawk began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber and to billions of listeners across known space. 2 years ago, humanity withdrew from the restrictive galactic accords. Today we propose a new covenant, not of limitation, but of elevation. The proposal that followed would reshape galactic civilization for millennia to come. The Terran Covenant wasn't a treaty of submission or dominance, but something unprecedented, a mutual defense and development pact that offered every species the opportunity to reach their full potential under human protection and guidance. "We have learned that peace cannot be maintained through restraint alone," Nighthawk continued. "True peace requires strength, strength to protect the innocent, strength to punish the guilty, and strength to help others become strong themselves." In the months leading up to this moment, humanity had proven the effectiveness of their philosophy. The Viridian Protectorates had become the most prosperous region in their sector. Former pirate havens had been transformed into thriving trade hubs. Even the remnants of the Korthak hegemony, under human oversight, had begun the process of cultural rehabilitation. Captain Alara Nighthawk, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, watched the proceedings from the TCNS Prometheus Unbound, which orbited the diplomatic world as both guardian and symbol. Her fleet had grown into something unprecedented, a force capable of maintaining order across an entire galactic arm. Admiral, her new first officer, Commander Talon Ashworth, reported, "We're receiving acceptance signals from the major galactic powers. The Coalition, the Federation, even the Syndicate are agreeing to the Covenant terms. And the holdouts? 17 minor systems are requesting more time to consider. No outright rejections. This wasn't surprising. The Covenant offered something no galactic organization had ever provided: guaranteed security in exchange for adherence to a universal code of ethics. Species that joined would receive human military protection, technological assistance, and economic development aid. In return, they agreed to abandon aggressive expansion, respect the rights of other species, and contribute to the common defense. But the most revolutionary aspect of the Covenant was its enforcement mechanism. Rather than relying on bureaucratic processes or diplomatic pressure, violations would be addressed by the Terran Arbitration Fleet, human military forces with the authority to investigate, judge, and if necessary, correct aggressive behavior. Director Nix Hara, former head of Syndicate Intelligence and now one of the Covenant's architects, had initially opposed giving humans such authority. But her own analysis had convinced her it was the only workable solution. The traditional galactic order was built on the assumption that rational beings would choose cooperation over conflict, she explained to skeptical delegates. But rationality is subjective, and cooperation requires trust. Humans offer something different, the certainty that aggression will be punished and cooperation will be rewarded. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Several civilizations had tested human resolve in the early months, only to discover that humanity's new doctrine was absolute. The Corvani Empire had attempted to seize mining rights in disputed territory and found their entire fleet disabled within hours. The Nexus Collective had tried to intimidate a human protectorate and discovered that economic warfare against the Terran Confederacy was futile. But for every test of human strength, there were dozens of examples of human generosity. When the Epsilon system suffered a plague that threatened to wipe out their civilization, human medical fleets arrived within days with treatments and supplies. When the Zeta colonies faced an asteroid impact event, Human Engineering Corps diverted the threat and rebuilt the damaged infrastructure at no cost. The galaxy was learning that humanity's power was matched by their commitment to justice. As the HFY Covenant ratification ceremony concluded, a new reality settled over galactic civilization. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy had a unified defense force, a common legal framework, and a shared vision of progress. Ambassador Nighthawk delivered the closing address, his words broadcast to every inhabited world in known space. Today marks not the end of galactic independence, but the beginning of galactic responsibility. Every species, every world, every being now has the opportunity to reach their highest potential under the protection of a common shield. We offer not dominion, but partnership, not conquest, but cooperation, not restraint, but transformation. He paused, looking out at delegates who represented trillions of sentient beings. The age of survival is over. The age of thriving begins now. Across the galaxy, on worlds where beings had lived in fear of raiders, where civilizations had stagnated under the threat of war, where potential had been crushed by the strong preying on the weak, the message resonated with unprecedented hope. Humanity had not become the galaxy's rulers. They had become something far more powerful, the galaxy's conscience, backed by the strength to enforce their moral vision. The restraint was over, but what had replaced it was not chaos or conquest. It was something the galaxy had never known. True peace through absolute justice, and for the first time in galactic history, the future looked not just secure, but bright. In the years that followed, historians would mark this moment as the beginning of the golden age of galactic civilization. Under the Terran Covenant, space travel became safe, scientific advancement accelerated beyond all previous rates, and conflict became a relic of the past. Humanity had lifted their restraint not to destroy, but to create, forging from the chaos of galactic politics a new order built on strength, justice, and the unwavering belief that every species deserved the chance to reach the stars. The galaxy had been warned. What they hadn't expected was that the warning would herald not their doom, but their salvation.